Crix-9 had seen many stupid things in his 14 cycles of existence, but volunteering for the Galactic Academy's survival course on planet Verdania definitely topped the list. The humid air clung to his purple scales like a wet towel, and his 4 eyes were constantly watering from the pollen that seemed to exist solely to make his life miserable. "Outstanding choice of planetary destination," muttered Vel Prime through her translator, her blue tentacles drooping with exhaustion. Who exactly thought sending 23 different species to a death world would be educational? Zara Lynn, a crystalloid being from the Rigel system, clinked softly as she moved. The brochure mentioned character-building opportunities and real-world applications. I should have known it was code for prepare to suffer. The group of alien cadets had been dropped into the heart of Verdania's most hostile jungle 3 days ago. Their mission? Survive for 7 days using only basic equipment and their wits. The problem was, most of their species had evolved on worlds where the biggest predator was roughly equivalent to Earth's house cat, and food came pre-packaged with nutritional labels. Crix-9 watched as Tambor, a gentle herbivore from Kepler 442b, tried unsuccessfully to identify which of the local plants wouldn't kill him instantly. The poor creature's 6 legs were shaking with hunger, and his usually vibrant green fur had turned a sickly yellow color. "Day 3, announced their human companion, Jake Morrison, checking his waterproof chronometer with annoying cheerfulness. "Everyone still breathing? That's progress." The aliens stared at him with a mixture of bewilderment and growing resentment. While they had spent the past 72 hours slowly starving and being terrorized by every sound in the jungle, Jake seemed to be treating the whole experience like an extended camping trip. His brown hair was still neat, his uniform was somehow cleaner than when they started, and he had apparently been sleeping soundly each night while the rest of them jumped at every shadow. "How exactly are you not dead?" asked Nix-7, an insectoid student whose compound eyes reflected the filtered sunlight streaming through the canopy. "Your species is from a Class 5 death world. But even that should not explain your complete lack of survival instinct failure." Jake grinned, revealing those unsettling white teeth that seemed designed specifically for tearing flesh. "Survival instinct failure? Buddy, my survival instincts are working overtime. I'm just really good at this stuff." "This stuff?" Vel Prime's tentacles turned a deeper shade of blue, indicating extreme irritation. "You mean slowly dying in a hostile environment while hallucinating about food?" "Well, when you put it like that, it does sound pretty grim," Jake admitted, scratching his head. "But look on the bright side." "Okay, actually, I'm drawing a blank on the bright side right now. You guys are pretty miserable." Crix-9's stomach chose that moment to emit a sound that could charitably be described as a dying space whale. The noise echoed through the jungle, causing several small creatures to flee in terror. "Magnificent," he said sarcastically. "Now even my internal organs are betraying our location to predators. This day continues to exceed all expectations." The group had been following what they hoped was a game trail for the past 6 hours. But the path seemed to lead nowhere except deeper into the green hell that surrounded them. Massive trees towered overhead, their branches so thick they blocked out most of the sunlight. Strange sounds echoed from every direction, some musical, some threatening, and some that defied classification entirely. Zara Lynn suddenly stopped moving, her crystalline form trembling. Motion detected. Large. Approaching from the northeast quadrant. The aliens immediately clustered together, their various forms of panic manifesting in colorful displays of fear. Crick's Nine's scales shifted to a protective brown camouflage. Vel Prime's tentacles wrapped around her core body, and Tambor simply froze in place like a six-legged statue. "Everybody relax," Jake said calmly, not even bothering to look in the direction Zara Lynn had indicated. "It's probably just another one of those bear pig things we saw yesterday." "Just another bear pig thing?" Nix Seven's compound eyes bulged with disbelief. Those creatures were the size of small spacecraft and had teeth like industrial cutting tools. "Yeah, but they're vegetarians," Jake replied with a shrug. "All bark and no bite? Well, technically lots of bite, but only for plants." A massive crashing sound erupted from the underbrush, and something that looked like a cross between a rhinoceros and a mobile fortress burst into their clearing. It stood nearly 3 meters tall, covered in armor plating that seemed to absorb light, and its head featured no fewer than 6 horns arranged in what could only be described as an offensive formation. The alien students scattered like leaves in a hurricane. Crick's Nine found himself pressed against a tree trunk that felt uncomfortably similar to his homeworld's carnivorous barkworms. Vel Prime had somehow managed to wrap herself around a low-hanging branch, while Tambor was attempting to dig himself into the ground using pure panic as motivation. Jake, meanwhile, stood perfectly still in the center of the clearing, watching the creature with what appeared to be mild interest. "Fascinating," he said conversationally. "Definitely not in the Academy database. New species, maybe? Those horn arrangements suggest a territorial display mechanism rather than predatory behavior." The creature stopped its charge and tilted its massive head, studying Jake with eyes the size of dinner plates. For a moment, predator and human regarded each other in perfect silence. Then Jake did something that made every alien present question his mental stability. He slowly reached into his pack and pulled out one of their emergency food rations. "Easy there, big guy," he said softly, unwrapping the nutrition bar. "You look hungry, too." The creature's nostrils flared, testing the air. Its aggressive posture gradually relaxed as Jake carefully placed the food on the ground and backed away slowly. "Is he attempting communication through food offering?" whispered Zara Lynn, her voice barely audible through her translator. "Either that, or he is providing himself as a garnish," Crick's Nine replied, his voice filled with admiration for what he assumed was Jake's final act of defiance. The massive creature approached the nutrition bar cautiously, sniffed it thoroughly, then delicately picked it up with a tongue that was longer than Jake was tall. After a moment of contemplation, it consumed the bar in one bite. The beast then did something completely unexpected. It looked directly at Jake and made a sound that was unmistakably grateful, a low, rumbling purr that seemed to vibrate through the ground itself. "Well, I'll be," Jake said, grinning broadly. "You're welcome, buddy." The creature turned and crashed back into the jungle, leaving behind a clearing full of stunned alien cadets and one seemingly unflappable human. "What?" said Vel Prime slowly. "Just happened?" "Standard first contact protocol," Jake replied, as if feeding potentially deadly wildlife was something he did every Tuesday. "When in doubt, try being nice. Works about 60% of the time." 60%? Nix 7 buzzed with agitation. "What happens the other 40%? Jake's grin widened. "Well, that's when things get interesting." As they continued their trek through the jungle, the alien students found themselves studying their human companion with new eyes. There was clearly more to Jake Morrison than his casual demeanor suggested. But what worried them more was the growing suspicion that they were about to find out exactly what a human considered interesting. The sun was beginning to set, painting the jungle canopy in shades of orange and red that would have been beautiful under different circumstances. Currently, the approaching darkness filled most of the group with a very specific type of dread that came with being lost, hungry, and surrounded by unknown dangers. "We need to establish a secure perimeter for the night," announced Vel Prime, trying to maintain some semblance of military protocol despite their deteriorating situation. "Secure perimeter?" Crix 9 laughed bitterly. "With what, exactly? Our collection of academic credentials and strongly worded complaints?" Jake had wandered off about 20 minutes ago, claiming he wanted to check something out. This had caused significant anxiety among the group, as Jake was the closest thing they had to someone who understood how to not die on this planet. "Perhaps he has abandoned us," suggested Tambor mournfully. "I cannot blame him. We are clearly a liability in this environment." "No," said Zara Lynn with surprising conviction. "Human pack bonding behavior is well documented. He will return." "Pack bonding?" Nix 7's antennae twitched with curiosity. "Explain this concept." "Humans form emotional attachments to their group members with remarkable speed and intensity. Once bonded, they demonstrate extreme loyalty and protective behavior. It is considered both their greatest strength and their most exploitable weakness." As if summoned by the conversation, Jake reappeared through the trees, moving with a silence that seemed impossible for someone his size. He was carrying something large and furry over his shoulder, and his hands were stained with what looked suspiciously like blood. The alien students stared at him in shock. "Dinner," he announced cheerfully, dropping his burden to the ground with a wet thud. "Fresh meat, ready for cooking. Who's hungry?" The silence that followed was the kind usually reserved for moments of profound existential crisis. "You hunted something." Vel Prime's voice was barely above a whisper. "Well, yeah," Jake replied, looking genuinely confused by their reaction. "You guys were starving, so I fixed the problem." He gestured to his kill with obvious pride. The creature looked similar to a cross between a rabbit and a small deer, with soft brown fur and what had probably been very large, innocent eyes before Jake had done whatever Jake had done to it. "How?" asked Crix 9, his voice filled with equal parts horror and fascination. Jake shrugged and pulled a knife from his belt. It was not a standard Academy survival knife. This was something altogether more serious, with a serrated edge and what appeared to be custom grip modifications. Tracked it for about 15 minutes, waited for the right moment, then he made a quick gesture across his throat. "Quick and clean." It didn't suffer. The aliens continued to stare at him in stunned silence. "Oh, come on," Jake said, beginning to clean his knife with practiced efficiency. "Don't tell me you've never seen fresh meat before. How exactly did you think food was made?" "Manufacturing facilities," said Nix 7 weakly. "Automated protein synthesis, cellular agricultural processes." "Huh," Jake mused. "Sounds complicated. This way is much simpler." As he began the process of preparing their meal, Jake kept up a steady stream of casual conversation, apparently oblivious to the fact that he had just shattered every assumption his alien classmates had made about the nature of sentient behavior. "The trick is finding the right animal," he explained, while skinning the creature with disturbing expertise. "You want something that's been eating the local vegetation, but isn't high enough on the food chain to have accumulated toxins. This little guy is perfect. Herbivore, good muscle development, probably tastes like chicken." "Chicken?" Zara Lynn asked faintly. "Earthbird. Very popular food source. We eat about 23 billion of them per year." The number hit the alien students like a physical blow. 23 billion? Tambor's voice cracked with disbelief. Per year, Jake confirmed, now working on building a fire with the same casual competence he had shown in everything else. That's just chickens, mind you. Total meat consumption is much higher when you include cows, pigs, fish, deer, rabbits, ducks, turkeys, lamb, and various exotic species. Humans are really efficient at converting other life forms into nutrition. By the time Jake had their dinner cooking over a perfectly constructed campfire, the alien students had fallen into a kind of stunned acceptance of their situation. They were stranded in a hostile environment with a member of a species that apparently considered large-scale systematic predation to be a normal lifestyle choice. The smell of cooking meat filled the clearing, and despite their philosophical reservations, alien stomachs began to respond with involuntary enthusiasm. "This is wrong," Vel Prime said weakly, even as her tentacles reached toward the fire. "Sentient beings should not consume other life forms." "Why not?" Jake asked, genuinely curious. "It's efficient, sustainable when done right, and provides complete nutrition. Plus, this guy lived a free-range life in natural habitat. Much better than factory farming." "Factory farming?" Crix 9 was almost afraid to ask. Jake waved dismissively. "Industrial-scale meat production. We keep animals in controlled environments specifically for food production. Billions of them. It's quite an operation." The revelation that humans had industrialized predation sent another wave of shock through the group. "Your entire species survives by consuming other sentient beings?" asked Zara Lynn. "Well, not sentient," Jake corrected. "That would be problematic. We mostly stick to non-sapient species. Though there have been exceptions throughout history during particularly difficult times." The way he said "exceptions" made it clear that the human definition of particularly difficult times was probably very different from what other species might consider desperate circumstances. As the meat finished cooking, Jake divided it among the group with the kind of careful attention to fair distribution that suggested this was something he had done many times before. "Try it," he encouraged. "Your bodies need the protein and fat content. Plant-based survival is possible, but much more difficult in an environment like this." One by one, driven by hunger and the increasingly appealing smell, the alien students began to eat. The meat was surprisingly good. "This is quite flavorful," admitted Tambor, his usual vegetarian principles apparently no match for 3 days of starvation. "Natural diet, plenty of exercise, stress-free lifestyle until the end," Jake explained. "Makes a big difference in meat quality." As they ate, the alien students found themselves looking at their human companion with entirely new perspectives. Jake Morrison was not just another Academy cadet. He was a representative of a species that had turned predation into both an art form and an industrial process, and he had just demonstrated that these skills translated directly into survival advantages in hostile environments. "How many other humans possess these abilities?" asked Nick 7, now working on his second helping despite his earlier moral objections. "Which abilities specifically?" Jake replied. "Hunting, tracking, weapon use, fire building, meat preparation, or general survival skills." "All of them." Jake considered this seriously. "Well, most humans learn basic cooking as children. Fire building is pretty standard outdoor education. Weapon use varies by region, but it's common enough. Hunting is more specialized, but still practiced by millions of people as recreation." "Recreation?" Vel Prime's tentacles turned pale blue with shock. "Oh yeah, it's quite popular. Some humans spend their entire vacations hunting different species. There are whole industries built around it. Guides, equipment manufacturers, specialized clothing, Trophy preparation services? The aliens had stopped eating and were staring at him again. Trophy preparation? Crix-9's voice was barely audible. You know, mounting heads on walls, preserving hides, that sort of thing. Humans like to keep mementos of successful hunts. The silence that followed was broken only by the crackling of the fire and distant jungle sounds. Your species, said Zara Lean slowly, decorates their homes with the preserved remains of creatures they have killed for entertainment purposes. Some do, Jake confirmed. It's considered a mark of skill and achievement. Plus, they make conversation starters at parties. As the alien students processed this latest revelation about human culture, Jake began preparing their campsite for the night with the same methodical efficiency he had shown in everything else. We'll want watches throughout the night, he announced. I'll take first shift. The local nocturnal predators are probably more dangerous than what we've encountered during the day. More dangerous than you? Asked Crix-9, and there was no sarcasm in his voice this time. Jake looked up from where he was arranging their sleeping area and gave him a smile that showed far too many teeth. Well, he said thoughtfully, that remains to be seen. The fourth dawn on Verdania brought with it a symphony of alien bird calls and the uncomfortable realization that Jake Morrison had somehow managed to construct what could generously be called a 5-star jungle resort while his classmates slept. Crix-9 opened his 4 eyes to discover a neatly organized camp complete with a water filtration system, several drying racks loaded with what appeared to be jerky, and a collection of sharp wooden spears arranged in a tactical formation around their perimeter. Morning, sunshine, Jake called cheerfully from where he was skinning another small creature. Sleep well. When exactly did you accomplish all of this? Vel Prime demanded, her tentacles gesturing wildly at the transformed campsite. I was on watch until 2 hours ago, and none of this existed then. Jake shrugged without looking up from his work. Couldn't sleep. Figured I might as well make myself useful. Plus, I heard some interesting sounds coming from the south. We might have visitors today. Visitors? Nix-7's compound eyes swiveled nervously. What kind of visitors? The kind with big teeth and poor attitudes, Jake replied with disturbing calm. Nothing we can't handle, but it's better to be prepared. Zara Lynn clinked softly as she examined one of the spears. The craftsmanship was remarkable, considering it had been made with primitive tools in complete darkness. The point was razor-sharp, the balance was perfect, and the grip was wrapped with strips of hide for better control. You manufactured weapons during the night watch period? She asked. Basic spears, really? Though I did get a bit creative with the poison tips. Jake held up a small clay pot filled with dark liquid. Local plant extract causes paralysis in most carbon-based life forms. Probably won't kill anything, but it should slow them down considerably. The alien students exchanged glances that conveyed a mixture of gratitude and existential terror. How do you know which plants are toxic? Asked Tambor, who had been carefully avoiding most of the local vegetation. Trial and error, Jake said with a grin that suggested the trials had not all been conducted on himself. Plus, basic biochemistry. Most worlds with oxygen-based ecosystems develop similar defensive compounds. You just need to know what to look for. As they prepared to break camp, Jake distributed the spears among the group with brief instructions on proper grip and thrusting techniques. His teaching style was practical and efficient, as if he had done this many times before. Remember, he told them, pointy end goes toward the threat. Try not to stab each other. Questions? Just one, said Crix-9, hefting his spear experimentally. Are all humans like you? Jake paused thoughtfully. Define like me. Capable of manufacturing weapons from jungle materials, identifying edible versus toxic substances through experimental methods, and treating mortal danger as a mild inconvenience? Oh, that. Jake resumed, packing his gear. No, not all humans are military trained, but most of us learn basic survival skills during childhood. Camping, hiking, fishing, hunting. It's considered normal recreation. Your species teaches children to kill things for fun? Velprime's voice pitched higher with each word. Well, when you put it like that, it sounds sinister, Jake admitted. But it's really more about understanding natural systems and developing practical skills. Plus, fresh fish tastes better than processed. Food substitutes. They had been walking for about an hour when Zara Lynn detected movement in the canopy above. Her crystalline structure allowed her to perceive electromagnetic variations that the others missed, and what she was seeing made her very nervous. Multiple life forms, she reported quietly. Large, moving parallel to our position, maintaining consistent distance. Jake nodded without apparent concern. Yeah, they've been following us since we left camp, probably curious about our scent signature. You knew we were being stalked and did not think to mention this? Crick's 9's scales flickered between camouflage brown and alarmed yellow. Stalked is a strong word, Jake replied. They're just checking us out. If they wanted to attack, they would have done it already. Predators don't usually follow prey for extended periods unless they're unsure about the outcome. Unsure about the outcome of attacking us? Nix 7 buzzed with nervous energy. We are 23 malnourished Academy cadets armed with pointed sticks. 22 malnourished Academy cadets, Jake corrected. I'm doing fine. Plus, we have advantages they don't expect. Such as? Jake's smile was genuinely frightening. Me? The attack came at midday, when the jungle heat was at its most oppressive, and the alien students were focused on not collapsing from exhaustion. The creatures that emerged from the undergrowth were unlike anything in their xenobiology databases. They moved on 6 legs with fluid grace, stood nearly 2 meters tall, and possessed heads that were mostly teeth, arranged around what appeared to be sensory organs of unknown function. Their hide was mottled green and brown, perfect camouflage for the jungle environment. There were 5 of them, and they had clearly planned their assault with tactical intelligence. The alien students did exactly what their academy training had taught them to do in crisis situations. They panicked efficiently and sought cover while attempting to establish communication protocols with the hostile entities. Jake did something entirely different. The first creature lunged at Tambor with obvious predatory intent. Jake intercepted it mid-leap with a spear thrust that was both precise and devastatingly effective. The poisoned tip found a gap in the creature's natural armor, and the beast hit the ground writhing as paralysis spread through its nervous system. "Form a circle!" Jake shouted, pulling a second spear from his pack. "Back to back! Do not let them separate us." The alien students obeyed, with the kind of automatic compliance that comes from recognizing superior expertise in survival situations. The remaining 4 creatures circled their defensive formation, testing for weaknesses. Their movements suggested pack hunting intelligence and considerable experience with prey that fought back. "They are coordinating their assault patterns," observed Zara Lynn, her voice remarkably steady considering the circumstances. "Yeah, they're smart," Jake agreed, tracking the creature's movements with predatory focus of his own. "But they've never hunted anything like us before." "Like us?" Velprime's tentacles were wrapped tightly around her spear. "Or like you?" "Both," Jake replied. "Watch and learn." What happened next would be discussed in xenobiology classes for decades to come, though the official reports would carefully omit certain details that reflected poorly on the supposed superiority of advanced galactic civilization. Jake Morrison, a single human cadet, armed with primitive weapons, systematically dismantled a coordinated pack of apex predators using tactics that seemed to combine military training, hunting experience, and what could only be described as enthusiastic creativity. He used the jungle itself as a weapon, leading the creatures into natural choke points where their numbers became a disadvantage. He employed psychological warfare, making sounds that caused the predators to hesitate at crucial moments. Most importantly, he demonstrated the kind of tactical thinking that comes from a species that had spent millions of years as both predator and prey. When the last creature retreated into the undergrowth, nursing wounds that would heal but would definitely be remembered, Jake was breathing only slightly harder than normal. The alien students, meanwhile, were experiencing what their medical databases would later classify as combat-induced trauma responses. "That was," said Crix-9 slowly, "the most terrifying display of controlled violence I have ever witnessed." "Thanks," Jake replied, cleaning his spear with practiced efficiency. "You guys did good too. Nice defensive formation, nobody panicked too badly, and Zara Lynn's threat assessment was spot on." "We did nothing," protested Nix-7. "You eliminated 5 apex predators using wooden sticks and tactical superiority." "Team effort," Jake insisted. "I couldn't have maintained situational awareness on all vectors simultaneously. Your support was crucial." As they resumed their trek toward the extraction point, the alien students found themselves studying Jake with entirely new appreciation. This was not just human competence they were witnessing. This was what a species looked like when it had evolved specifically to excel at survival in hostile environments. "Jake," said Velprime carefully, "what exactly do humans do when they are not attending academy classes or fighting jungle predators?" "Oh, you know," Jake replied casually. "Work, family time, recreational activities. Pretty standard stuff." "Define recreational activities." Jake considered this. "Well, there's sports. Those are competitive physical contests that simulate various forms of combat. We have boxing, martial arts, wrestling, team battles with objective-based scenarios. Your recreational activities simulate combat." Tambor's voice was faint. "Some of them. Others simulate hunting, like archery, shooting sports, fishing tournaments. Then there are endurance challenges like marathon running, mountain climbing, deep water diving, wilderness survival competitions." "Wilderness survival competitions?" Zara Lynn's translator seemed to struggle with the concept. "Yeah, people volunteer to be dropped in hostile environments to test their skills against nature. It's quite popular. Winners get prizes and recognition." The alien students walked in contemplative silence for several minutes. "Your species," said Crix-9 finally, "voluntarily subjects itself to mortal danger for entertainment purposes." "Well, relatively mortal," Jake corrected. "We try to keep the actual death rates pretty low. Takes the fun out of it if too many people get killed." "Try to keep the death rates low?" Nix-7's antennae twitched with disbelief. "Yeah, we use safety equipment, medical support teams, controlled environments. Though accidents still happen. That's part of what makes it exciting." As the day progressed, Jake continued to demonstrate abilities that seemed impossible for someone who claimed to be a normal academy cadet. He identified edible plants with casual expertise, constructed water purification systems from natural materials, and navigated the jungle terrain as if he possessed some kind of supernatural sense of direction. "How do you know which direction leads to the extraction point?" asked Velprime during one of their brief rest stops. Jake pointed to various natural indicators that he claimed revealed compass directions, time of day, and seasonal patterns. His explanation was detailed, logical, and completely beyond the comprehension of students whose home worlds had electronic navigation systems built into the planetary infrastructure. "Basic survival skills," he concluded. "Every human child learns this stuff in primary education." "Every human child?" Tambor's voice cracked slightly. "Well, most of them. Depends on the region and cultural background. Some places focus more on urban survival skills like traffic navigation, crowd dynamics, economic resource management, social threat assessment." Social threat assessment? Zara Lynn clinked nervously. "You know, identifying potentially dangerous individuals in social situations, reading body language, detecting deception, recognizing aggressive behavior patterns, standard personal safety protocols." The alien students absorbed this information with growing alarm. Not only were humans naturally equipped for physical survival in hostile environments, but they had also developed sophisticated systems for managing threats from their own species. "Do humans frequently pose threats to other humans?" asked Crix 9. Jake's expression became more serious. "Sometimes. Humans are complex. We can be incredibly cooperative and altruistic, but we also have competitive and territorial instincts. Most of us learn to manage these impulses through social conditioning and legal frameworks." "Most of us?" Velprime's tentacles had turned a pale blue color that indicated deep concern. "Well, yeah, there are always exceptions. Individuals who don't respond well to social conditioning, or who develop antisocial behavior patterns. That's why we need threat assessment skills." The implications of this revelation settled over the group like a heavy blanket. Humans were not just apex predators in natural environments, they were also potential threats to each other, which had led them to develop even more sophisticated survival skills for managing intraspecies conflict. By late afternoon, they reached the extraction zone. The clearing was exactly where Jake had predicted it would be, marked by emergency beacons that had been invisible to alien senses but somehow obvious to human perception. The rescue shuttle arrived precisely on schedule, piloted by Academy instructors who seemed unsurprised to find their students alive and reasonably healthy. "Excellent work, cadets," announced Commander Vex Prime through the shuttle's communication system. "Survival rates for this exercise typically average 67%. You have achieved 100% mission success." The alien students looked at each other with growing understanding. They had not just survived a routine training exercise. They had participated in an activity that normally resulted in significant casualties. "Commander," called Crix 9 as they boarded the shuttle, "what is the typical survival rate for human cadets on this same exercise?" There was a pause before the commander responded. "Human cadets do not participate in this particular survival course. Their training exercises take place in significantly more challenging environments." As the shuttle lifted off from Verdania's surface, the alien students contemplated this final piece of information about their human classmate. Jake Morrison, who had kept them all alive through 4 days in a hostile jungle, who had hunted and cooked their food, who had manufactured weapons and defeated apex predators, who had demonstrated skills that seemed impossible to students from advanced galactic civilizations, was considered a normal example of his species, and his species required more challenging training exercises to properly test their survival capabilities. "Jake," said Velprime quietly as they watched Verdania shrink below them, "thank you for keeping us alive." Jake looked genuinely surprised by the gratitude. "No problem. That's what teammates do, right?" We look out for each other. Is that a human cultural norm? Asked Zara Lynn. Pretty much, Jake replied. We're social creatures. Taking care of the group is just basic instinct. As the shuttle jumped to hyperspace, carrying them back to the safety and civilization of the Galactic Academy, the alien students found themselves with a completely transformed understanding of what it meant to be human. They had learned that humans were not just another spacefaring species that had achieved technological advancement through intelligence and cooperation. They were something much more dangerous and much more valuable. They were survivors. And perhaps, thought Crix-9 as he watched Jake casually clean his fingernails with the tip of a handmade knife, that was exactly the kind of ally the galaxy needed. After all, the universe was a dangerous place. It was good to have friends who specialized in making it less dangerous for everyone else.